Throughout the years, Nintendo has always tried to be very innovative and unique with their controllers. Some attempts were completely awful, but sometimes they end up being some of the best controllers of all time. The way we'll be ranking these controllers are by comfort, performance, and lastly, the design. With all that being said, in this video I'll be ranking every Nintendo controller worst to best, so let's get right into the ranking. First off, we have the Virtual Boy. The look of this controller is just plain old awful. It looks like someone went to Photoshop and stretched out the PlayStation 2 controller. The button layout is just stupid as well. Why are both the D-pads at both ends of the controller? Last time I checked, my hands aren't the size of Victor Wembanyama's. The buttons are also diagonal from the D-pads, which makes the controller even harder to use. Not only is the Virtual Boy the worst console ever made, but also one of the worst controllers ever. The Zapper is one of the funniest creations by Nintendo. You would never expect Nintendo to make something like this, but I absolutely love the design of the Zapper. The only problem with the Zapper really is the lack of games it was used for. The only one I can think of on the top of my head is Duck Hunt, but I would really love if Nintendo made another one of these in the future. The only bad thing is it is really hard to implement in a ton of games. Also, shout out to the Zapper and Splatoon. Next up is one of the goofiest looking controllers of all time, being the Nintendo 64 controller. This proves how innovative Nintendo is with their products though, since this was so ahead of its time. This controller is comparable to when Kanye dropped 808s and Heartbreak. One of them was successful, the other was pretty bad. The N64 controller is praised for its innovation, but performance wise it's pretty bad. You don't even use it like a normal controller. You have to hold the bottom of it and hold the right side, since the analog stick was on the bottom and the buttons were on the right side. The NES Advantage is just a huge arcade joystick basically, but the NES had a ton of arcade based games, so this controller was perfect for it. Now of course it's not better than the original controller, but I could see why someone would choose this one over it. This controller was perfect for games like Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, and Galaga. I wish Nintendo dropped a remake of this controller for the Switch Online, because I would definitely use it for the arcade based games. The NES Max was a unique spin on the NES controller. What they did differently with this controller than the original is make it smaller. They also added an analog circle, kind of like how the 3DS has. But the problem I have with it is the NES really wasn't meant to have that function, which kind of ruins it. But the idea wasn't really that bad, and I see what Nintendo was trying to do, but I'm still taking the OG NES controller over it. Speaking of the original NES controller, it takes this spot. This controller is iconic, and the simple design is one of my favorite things about it. I really enjoy using this controller. The only flaw I really have is the comfort. Using this controller for long periods of time is miserable. The small design along with the small button layout is really uncomfortable, but the performance of this controller gets the job done for NES games, and we have to give the NES controller its flowers for being such an iconic controller. The Wii Classic controller was the alternate controller to the Wii Remote, which we'll see much further down the list. Now this controller to me is pretty annoying, mainly for the fact you have to plug it into the Wii Remote, because it didn't have motion control, but the flaws about the controller I have is the quality as well. Something about this controller just felt super weird. The buttons didn't feel good at all, but this controller was only really made to play games that didn't have motion controls in it, since the Wii did offer retro games at the time. The Wii Classic Pro was a much needed upgrade comfort wise. It had the iconic grips we see on modern controllers today, which I think should have been on the Wii Classic controller to begin with, but I'm not going to get into all of that. But the same problems apply to the Pro version like the original, that being the bad quality. The buttons just don't feel good at all when you use this controller. If the buttons were somewhat better quality, this controller would be quite a bit higher on the list, but later down the line Nintendo figured out how to actually make good Pro controllers. The NES Dogbone is very similar to the SNES controller, but of course with fewer buttons than the Super Nintendo controller, but I love the design of the Super Nintendo controller and it's honestly very comfortable, so making the NES version of that was the perfect idea, since the NES controllers are not good after a while. So the NES Dogbone was a major upgrade during the time, and of course it influenced one of the most iconic controllers being the Super NES controller. The Wii U gamepad comes in this spot. Now if it wasn't for the Wii U we probably wouldn't have the Nintendo Switch, so we have to give the Wii U its flowers for that. But of course the first flaw I can think of for the Wii U gamepad is its wide frame. I don't know how I was even able to use this when I was little because of how big the Wii U gamepad actually was. But another flaw is how you can't even really take it on the go. You couldn't take the Wii U gamepad away from the Wii U even within the distance of like your other room, or it'll just disconnect. It was just basically useful for using in your bed basically. But I really enjoyed the quality of the buttons. They honestly weren't that bad on the gamepad. I thought they were major upgrades from previous controllers Nintendo had made, but not many people got to experience the Wii U, which is very upsetting since the console is severely underrated. Next up are the Joy-Cons. These little things have the same flaws as the NES controller. After a long time using them, they're just very uncomfortable. But some people think the size was an issue, but I really never had a problem with them, since my hands and fingers aren't really that big to begin with. But another flaw is by far the worst thing about it is the stick drift. I don't know what it is, but these things always always find a way to get stick drift. A little dust particle is the Joy-Con's biggest obstacle, but I really enjoy the buttons on the Joy-Cons, which is honestly why they're this high on the list. I think the quality was very good for the Joy-Cons. The Wii Remote is a classic. I really enjoyed using the Wii Remote since it was basically the founding father of the Joy-Con. For its time, it was a very good controller. It also implemented motion controls, and another cool thing was how you could hold it vertical or horizontal, and it was honestly very underratedly comfortable. Wii Motion Plus was an even better version of the Wii Remote, just making it even more comfortable. I don't think it was really that much better of an upgrade though. But if you thought the Wii controllers were uncomfortable, then I would understand why you'd want to upgrade. But pretty much all the same things apply to this one like the original. Not much was really changed besides the little plastic thing over it. The Wii Remote and Nunchuck were such a good duo. For games like Mario Galaxy and Twilight Princess, this duo was the perfect combination. It makes the games a lot more immersive, along with just being better feeling than just using the Wii Remote. The Nunchuck also felt surprisingly good. I felt like the buttons were really good quality to make it using it enjoyable. I hope in the future they make something similar to the Nunchuck again, since I thought it made the motion control games a better experience with it. Next up, we have the Switch in handheld mode. I unfortunately haven't gotten to use the Switch OLED though, so I'm not sure if that would bump it up in the rankings, but I think the spot would still remain here. I feel like the Switch in its handheld mode is amazing for portable gaming. It's the perfect size to hold, and the buttons are placed very good on the Joy-Cons. If the next console is similar to the Switch, then I hope it remains very similar. I just hope the Joy-Cons get better at defending against dust. The Joy-Cons with the controller is one of the best ways to play the Switch in this stock mode. The controller that goes with the Joy-Cons comes with the Switch as well, but it's a very good comfortable controller. The only thing holding it back is the use of the Joy-Cons, but even then I love using this controller. If my other controller that is later down the list is dead or something, I'm definitely going to use this controller. This might be a shocker, but I'm putting the Super NES controller in this spot. I absolutely love using this controller. I've been using it a lot lately too, because I've been playing on the SNES Classic Edition. I just love using the Super Nintendo controller. It's the perfect size and the buttons feel absolutely amazing. The only flaw I'd say is maybe the D-pad, but even then that's not even that big of an issue. I think it's one of the best controllers ever, and it's even cooler that it's from the early 90s. Honestly, the GameCube controller would be in contention for first. I love this controller. The buttons feel amazing. The button layout is perfect, and the controller is very comfortable to use. If you haven't experienced using this controller, you have to find a way to use it. It's one of the best controllers of all time, and a lot of Nintendo fans love it, including myself. The Switch Pro controller is hands down the best controller Nintendo has ever made. I absolutely love using this controller. It's my second favorite controller of all time, behind the PlayStation 5 controller. It's so comfortable and the buttons are perfect quality. The button layout is good as well. I'm never not using this controller too. It can also connect using Bluetooth, so it's perfect for using as an emulator controller. Well, that's my ranking of every Nintendo controller. Are you mad that I didn't put the N64 controller in first? Tell me down in the comments, and while you're down there, give me a ranking of your own Nintendo controllers. If you guys haven't heard either by now, I'm gonna start uploading once every Saturday or Sunday. Since school started back up for me, I'm a little bit more busy now, and I might be able to pump out 2 videos a week, one on a weekday, the other on a weekend, but we'll just have to wait and see. If not, I'll upload 1 video a week. That will be usually longer and hopefully higher quality for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and peace out.